are ongoing realities about the Declaration of Independence that most of us don't even appreciate. And I want to challenge you. Please listen. Take out. I'm going to put another link here. I'm looking at my time. My time's starting to get away from me. No, let's go ahead and do it. Okay, let's go ahead and do it because I think this is so important for you to hear of what's going on as far as the Declaration of Independence is concerned.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure
liberty,
these rights
pursuit
governments
of
are
happiness.
instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent shall be obtained, and when so suspended he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining, in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for their tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offences, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighbouring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun in circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves with their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on our protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
We pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You know, I know that's a long reading of the Declaration of Independence, but I'm going to remind you, I would almost guarantee you very few of you have read the Declaration of Independence, and particularly if you grew up in the educational system in the last 30, 40 years, you haven't, because civics is no longer taught in public schools. Now, let me just give you a book that you might want to, it's a big boy, okay? This is something you ought to look at. Christian History of the Constitution of the United States. Okay, Christian Self-Government with Union, okay? And you can order that online, okay? But in there, in this particular document, they give you actual copies of for example, the Magna Carta and all of the things that founded this great nation as a Christian nation. Now, because we are not being taught this, churches don't teach this. We don't realize that we do have a covenant with God for this nation. And I believe as we celebrate this Declaration of Independence week, and as we celebrate the 4th of July, Christians need to come immediately to respond to the great awakening of God's purposes for this nation. God is not done with this nation, and He's not done with the world yet. So I want to encourage you, learn about the Christian heritage of our foundation, and you'll learn that this particular nation, now that particular Declaration of Independence, primarily written by Thomas Jefferson at the age of 33. Think about it, age of 33. Let's look around at people today at the age of 33. They're still living at home with their mother, living in another room, living in the basement, playing video games. And here at age 33, Thomas Jefferson is now already writing the Declaration of Independence, would begin to bring into the world one of the greatest documents ever to be written, as well as the Constitution, which we are to be living our nation by. Now, let me tell you, we are not a democracy. We've never been a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and that is a big difference than being a democracy. So when you hear all of these little yakety, yakety, yacky, yak, 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 we got to preserve our democracy. This is for the democracy. This is an attack against our democracy. They are lying to you. We're not a democracy. And you see, they want to frame everything into this idea that we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. We are 50 states joined together by a constitution with representative government in every state. Now, why is that important? Because, listen, if you want to live in a true democracy, then I guarantee you, when you realize that 50 votes plus one, 50% of the votes plus one, and let's suppose you're in a classroom and all of a sudden someone says, let's have a vote on whether or not we should kick this kid out of the class. And there's 20 people in there, and all of a sudden 11 say, kick him out. You have no representation. That's a democracy. That's not a constitutional republic.